spot. Bird won't get in there.
Давайте обстрел пошел!
Chances are you've heard of Ukraine. Chances are you've heard that Russian President Vladimir Putin is waging a war there. But what is it actually like to live under Russian bombardment? And why do civilians choose to stay when they know they could die at any moment?
With us now from Uzbekistan.
This is Holly McCain, Kabul.
Mazar Sharif, Taliban capital of Kandahar.
At a camp in the edges of Kabul.
Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan.
Iran, Turkey, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, also Burma, Russia, East Africa.
Sat through military tribunals and interviewed hundreds of soldiers, civilians, and government officials before, during, and after the horrors of war.
We have to understand the way that they think.
While there was a lot of tension, none of us really thought the invasion was going to happen.
That Russia has amassed about 150,000 troops around the borders of Ukraine. And so there is definitely a legitimate threat of an invasion. However, people in Kyiv are very set on defending themselves.
Here in the center of Kyiv. It is curfew time, so we can't really have any lights on, so I'm a bit in the dark here. Russia thought it could take its neighbor Ukraine in less than a week, but that wasn't to happen. Ukraine put up a fierce resistance, but that doesn't mean it wasn't without a lot of pain.
On our way to a checkpoint, there's been some sort of attack. I'm with some wonderful medics.
Irpin, which was just shelled. People, as you can see, evacuating here. Babies, old people. This whole place was just shelled as people were trying to leave.
The enormity of death and destruction in those first few weeks was absolutely harrowing. But no Ukrainian man aged between 18 and 60 was allowed to leave the country. Everybody was expected to stay and fight if needed. Yet, despite the difficult circumstances, there was just this sense of people trying to go about their daily life and trying to bring some joy into each day.
I am at the breakfast hall in my hotel in Kyiv. As you can hear, the music is pumping. I think there's always a lovely sentiment about people in war just trying to keep things normal where they can, and music and food and sort of being together is one of those things.
Від війни подзвони, я так люблю тебе, сонце, також як і ти, також як і ти.
Eventually, I had to do a 16-hour train journey out with the refugees.
People everywhere trying to leave before lockdown comes into effect at 5 o'clock today, which means no one is going to be able to leave their place in Kyiv.
I'm with humanitarian volunteers from the Mozart Group, heading into the east, into Bakhmut, about 450 miles from Kyiv, and at the heart of Russia's bombardment. There are no services in this abandoned city, nobody to collect food, bombs going off in the distance, no power, no electricity, no heating, no school. and little food. And yet, somehow, people stay there, and somehow, they survive. There isn't a building in and around Bakhmut that isn't destroyed. Every single dwelling has been harmed or brought down in some way. It's hard to remember that life here was once normal. Yet the notion of survival feels like a game of Russian roulette. Day in and day out, it's constant bombardment. Horrifying sounds have become so normal, civilians don't even flinch anymore. For me, it is absolutely the worst part of the job, and I am in awe of the volunteers who go that extra mile to help strangers.
Where are we going? Moving? Moving?
I guess. All right, I didn't realize that was the plan. Dog under the car, watch out.
One thing about life under shelling is how profoundly exhausting it is, like running back-to-back marathons. And yet many people who have lived in Bakhmut all their lives refuse to leave. They live in their basements, in their destroyed homes, and accept whatever fate lies ahead. As the bombardment intensifies, Mozart volunteers offer to escort people out of the city. Many refuse.
А как вы будете без продукта, вот обстрелы сильные?
Это мое дело.
Я понимаю, но не боитесь умереть?
Ну що вам надо від мене?
Мы вам помочь хотим.
Я
Нам от вас
вам
ничего
раз
не надо.
сказала, що я нікуди не
Excuse me,
збираюсь.
why are you bothering me? I
Тут
told you
умирать
already,
буду.
I'm not gonna move.
Вот.
Just say we just check in to
She's
see.
okay, so you die.
Before the war, Bakhmut had a population of around 85,000. Today, it is around 10,000, although it's hard to know because so many live in basements, and some are children.
Not many taxi drivers are willing to come to the area. But very still.
Eventually, some Bakhmut residents, like this lady, do make the decision to go. Although, unlike other war zones, there are no long-term camps, and for those without family, there really is nowhere but their broken home. And what is perhaps almost worse than the persistent bombardment are the moments of eerie silence. It's haunting, and you're constantly waiting for something to happen. War robs people of other rights too. Things we take for granted, like calling 911, also disappear during conflict. One afternoon, locals direct us to the 9th floor of a shattered apartment building, claiming that a man was killed there and that the body has been there for 9 days and nobody will come to collect it. It appears the man's face was hacked off in a violent altercation. We go to the police station to try to make a report, to have somebody come to investigate. But in war, it seems you can just get away with murder.
Yeah, we should just leave.
Tell Inspector Clouseau to fuck off.
Don't you know we're in a war? We can't do anything about dead people.
War might bring out the worst in people, but it also brings out the best. And there are still many selfless volunteers risking their own lives to try to save and support those living in these precarious and awful environments. There are small moments that feel like victories, like this one, when you can't get coffee and you find a bombed out store selling caffeine drinks, you take it. But the reality is that the owner of the shop believes that it is the Ukrainians that are shelling them, proving to me that the pro-Russia sentiment in the East is still very strong. I think a lot about the next chapter of this war. There are no winners. The Ukrainians who've lost their homes, their limbs, and their lives don't win. The Russians, who have been heavily sanctioned and sent hundreds of thousands of soldiers to die, don't win. The American taxpayers don't win, nor do the Europeans. So who is winning this war, and what really is to gain from it? Dozens of Ukrainian men die every single day on the front lines in Bakhmut. I think of these men and wonder if they've made it through. The 12-hour drive back to Kyiv is pause for reflection. There is no good in this war, and nobody is going to come out unscathed. Back in Kyiv, moral triumphs matter, and one of those is getting a little fun in on a Saturday night before the 10 p.m. curfew. And as the resilient Ukrainians show us, even in war, life does go on.